Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. We are continuing our discussion from Surah Ar Rum, trying to find out some of the parameters, causes of the decline of societies, and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while a society is doing well, you start to see them going downhill. What is the reason? So in that context, I wanted to bring today 4 verses, let us say, from Surah Ar Rum, verses 33 and onwards. So without further, let me just first give you the plain meaning of these 4 verses, and then we try to extract some of the lessons for mankind. وَإِذَا مَسَّ النَّاسَ ضُرٌّ دَعَوْا رَبَّهُمْ مُنِيبِينَ إِلَيْهِ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala massa means touch. So it's not a big boxing or a slap or a very harsh punishment, it's just a touch of hardship. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala touches people, and here is the nas, the whole mankind, it's not specific people. So these are rules that is applicable to everybody, for the whole mankind. And as such, the Quran is for the mankind. So when massa nasa, when people are touched with dur, hardship, economic, pandemic, war, whatever, floods, natural disasters, man-made disasters, massa nasa durrun. What happens? دعوا ربهم منيبين إليه. They started to cry out to their Lord, turning to Him, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, feeling humble in front of Allah. They express the tawheed, they express the sincerity and ikhlas. But as soon as He gives them a test of His mercy, وَإِذَا أَذَاقَهُم مِّنْهُ رَحْمَةً. Adhaqa is test. So it contrasts with the massa. Because the real punishment and the real blessing is in the akhirah. The dunya here is small touches here and there, small taste, okay. So when Allah gives them a taste of the mercy, a flavor, a little bit flavor of Allah's mercy, what happens? إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ. A group of this mankind starts to make shirk. إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. Started to associate others with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah says in the next verse, لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُمْ فَتَمَتَّعُوا فَسَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ. So what happens when they forget to attribute these blessings and rahmah to Allah? What happens? They become kufr. This is a manifestation of kufr. لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُم. The favors that Allah gave them, they started to hide it. They start to attribute it to their own efforts, fortune, smartness, science, technology, and forget that the hidden hand of Allah was behind it. So what happens? Allah is threatening them. فَتَمَتَّعُوا. So enjoy yourself. Go enjoy yourself. فَسَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ. Look at this threatening, that soon you will know. Then in verse 35 Allah says, أَمْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا فَهُوَ يَتَكَلَّمُ بِمَا كَانُوا بِهِ يُشْرِكُونَ. Is it the case that we send down to them an authority which attests to what they associate with Him? So when they attribute these periods of booming, periods of progress, when they attribute it to their own deeds, do they have a very powerful authority to the mind, authority to a clear proof that there was a causal relationship between this and this economic boost in the absence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do they have such a proof that they can be sure of that this kind of things happen because of my talents, because of this philosopher, because of that economic theory, because of this? No. فَهُوَ يَتَكَلَّمُ. So that it starts to talk, and talking means you proclaim and you express what is in your heart. بِمَا كَانُوا بِهِ يُشْرِكُونَ. The wrongly associating these causes of economic or whatever progress to a force, to a theory, to a scholar, to a reason, to a technology other than the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why Allah in the next verse reminds them again, وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً فَرِحُوا بِهَا. In the previous verse we have seen that when Allah touches them with hardship. Okay, now the opposite. وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً. When Allah touched them with a test of Allah's mercy, فَرِحُوا بِهَا. They became prideful, meaning at this time they don't go back and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although it is coming from Allah. So somebody is giving you gift, and instead of thanking that person for giving you that gift, you started to feel pride. So Allah says, وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ, but if they are afflicted with an evil, بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ, for what their hands have done, they have acquired it themselves, إِذَا هُمْ يَقْنَطُونَ, they instantly fall into despair. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. This is the verse, inshallah, we'll continue next time. But in order not to elongate the subject, these were the 4 verses that I wanted to highlight in the context of our discussion. So here, see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that if you want to summarize the history of mankind, it's nothing but the periods of hardship followed by periods of goodness and prosperity, followed by another period of hardship, followed by, okay? So this kind of oscillation, this cycle of boom and bust, any book of history is nothing but describing these cycles. In the philosophy of history, in the changing of society's situation from periods of prosperity followed by periods of affliction and hardship, then another period, okay? In that dynamics, what's going on? What's the root causes? So these verses, if you just contemplated on them, you could see these things coming up very clearly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. دَعَوْا رَبَّهُمْ مُنِيبِينَ إِلَيْهِ. You know, that gives another nature of human being, any human being, that no matter how the elders of various societies try to claim that we are atheists, and they never associate these things. But you go to the 99% of population, go to the villagers, wherever you just pick up, you will find deep in their heart some attachment with a mysterious force, that when there is a hardship, whether you say it loudly or you don't say it loudly, the heart goes and calls Allah to raise this problem from you. People today, when there are like airplane crash or about to crash or very turbulent situation, people without knowledge starts to attach to this higher entity. So Allah is telling them it is inbuilt, hard-coded, hardwired in the mindset and the heart of the people that there is an entity. But the problem here is that the problem of history is that when the things is changed, and this changes comes either as a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah says rahmah, or it could be as a test, because this world is a test. That's why Allah mentioned in other places, like in Surah Ar-Sajda, وَلَنُذِيقَنَّهُم مِّنَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَدْنَى دُونَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَكْبَرِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Allah touches mankind with minor, small punishments before the final punishment. And the objective of Allah is that people return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the communities, they do not attribute their progress to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People think that this change that we brought to a society, it is because of such, but in that list, there is no Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they have placed in that list as number 1 Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they could list others as a cause, because when Allah brings in a change, He brings in a change because of some effort, but it's not only because of those effort in the absence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't see the hand of Allah, or rather they see it and they conceal it. They cover it, as people cover, as the farmer covers the seed under the ground. لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُمْ. In this verse 35, أَمْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا. Have we sent down an authority? Sultanan. You see, the word sultan is interesting here. We use it, people know it from perspective of a leader, like the Muslims, they have sultan. Why they call a leader a sultan, or a khalifa as a sultan, or a sultan, Uthmani sultan, or this sultan? Because the sultan has a power over authority over people. So here it is a challenge to the mankind. Allah is saying is that whenever the community were able to bring changes, if they really analyze that what caused them to move out of their calamity, out of their hardship, the economic progress they have made, if they really analyzed it, they will find no sultan. They will find no clear authority that if you sit in a debate, he will lose that debate. So let's say there was a debate that, okay, we have came out of our poverty, we have achieved our SDG, sustainable goals, and now where we are in a least developed country, now we became an advanced economic country, let us say. Okay, so the debate is that what is the cause? So there was one person saying that the cause is because we have opened up the foreign investment, we have made these changes in the move the population from agrarian society to an industrial society. Okay, we have boosted in our science and technology, we have made some, by the suggestions of IMF and World Bank and this and that, we made this kind of structural adjustment, blah, 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 okay. So one person can do all these things that he thinks that these are my sultan. Means that this is the authority, these are the things that are the real causes. Another person sitting on the other side of the debate is attributing this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not saying that when a society means that from Allah means that you will sit down in the masjid and make dua and all in a sudden you wake up in the morning and you find the economic boost. No, this is not what we meant. And if you wanted to see what does that mean, you just need to look at the time of Sahaba, Ridwanullah alayhim, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of Khulafa Rashidin, what made those societies progress. So here in that debate, Allah is saying, أَمَنْزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا فَهُوَ يَتَكَلَّمُ بِمَا كَانُوا بِهِ يُشْرِكُونَ. Those things that they thought are the main reason, which is the yushrikun, that these are my causes of the changes. Is there such a sultan? Is there such an authority that would won that debate? Never. This real cause is at the hands of Allah, not at the hands of IMF or World Bank or other theories. It is at the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the thing that people miss.